Tonight we're going to study the second Exodus. We will go through all the verses, or at least most of them, where the Almighty promises the Exodus, the second Exodus, where he promises that he will gather his people from the four corners of the earth, where he dispersed us because of our sins. So this is a teaching that is very powerful, very needed, I believe, very important. You'll see why eventually. And is sadly very unknown by those who are believers or who claim to believe in the scriptures, and mostly because of the false doctrines in Christianity and because of what has been taught because of the state of Israel since 1948 and the way they claim the prophecies have been fulfilled, yet they haven't, as we will see through this study. Even though we will actually read most, if not all, and much more, but all the verses that they claim that have been fulfilled. When we read them in context, we will see how they haven't been fulfilled, and we will see clearly how it's about to happen and how huge, how important it will be, and also how to be part of it, of course, which is the most important part. So like I said, we're going to see a lot of verses from scriptures. We're going to take everything from scripture. We can go through the entire Tanakh, obviously, not the entire, the parts of the Tanakh where it speaks about the second Exodus. And I think that will be enough for tonight. So let's do that. And hopefully that will be a nice order for the study to be in, right? First, the Old Covenant, and then the New Covenant. And if there is a third part, we'll just make all the connections from one and the other with a few other verses. So, as I said, let's begin with Yeshayahu, chapter 11, verse 10 through 12. So this is a very important chapter. All right, so Yeshayahu 11. It begins saying, and a rod shall come forth from the stump of Yeshai, and a sprout from his roots shall be fruitful. His roots, that makes reference to Yahushua. Yahushua told the Pharisees that he's the root of David when he asked them, whose son is Mashiach? And they said, David's son. And he said, then why does David in Psalm 110 says, Yahweh said to my sovereign, sit at my right hand till I put your enemies as your footstool. So Yahushua was saying, well, and then he said, if David, the King David, calls him sovereign, Adon, how is he his son? Right? And after that, the Pharisees weren't able to ask him anything else because they were completely confused and didn't get it, pretty much. So Yahushua was telling them that he is the root of David, not the son of David, even though genetically he did come from David in the sense of the flesh. But spiritually, obviously, he was before David and he was with the Father. And that's why David, the king, said, my sovereign. So here, when he says roots, he's talking about Yahushua HaMashiach, who already came. This stump is pretty much the congregation after the apostasy. Ended up being just a stump because Rome, as iron, came with the axe and brought the apostasy. So pretty much trying to cut what Mashiach started when he came, died, and resurrected. So a rod shall come forth, that is a person who would be the branch, is called the branch, in this case the rod, which also makes reference to authority. Yahushua came as the priest, the high priest, the Kohen Hagadol. The last comes as the Melech Gadol, the great king. That's why after the first and last have manifested and fulfilled everything, Then we see that in Revelation 19, it says that on his thigh and on his robe, it says King of Kings and Sovereign of Sovereigns. So two titles as first and last, King of Kings, Sovereign of Sovereigns. So, and a rod shall come forth from the stump of Yeshai. So after the apostasy, after a while of the congregation being a stump, a rod shall come forth, and a sprout from his roots shall be fruitful. Those fruits will be the chosen few for the harvest. So then it says, the spirit of Yahweh shall rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and the fear of Yahweh. So 7, if we count the spirit of Yahweh, which would be the Shemesh, the light right in the middle, and then the other 3 on each side would be the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and the fear of Yahweh. So he comes with those 7 spirits, which are represented by the menorah. But if we continue, and I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a lot and very powerful, but to stay on track, we go to verse 10. It says, and in that day, so when the sprout comes out, when the rod, right, comes to the world through the stump of Yeshai, in that day, remember that also in scriptures, when the prophets say this, in that day, it refers to the end of times. So it's confirming that the branch would come at the end, because Yahushua, the root, came 2 times ago. And in that day, there shall be a root of Yishai, right? In our time, there's already a root, because already Mashiach came and died and resurrected. So the growth started. And in that day, there shall be a root of Yishai, standing as a banner to the people. Standing as a banner to the people. Yahushua HaMashiach is that banner. He's at the right hand of the Father, and it is through him that we become Yahudim. For it is written that there is no Greek nor Yahudi, there is no male nor female, there is no slave nor free, because we are all one in Mashiach, and the congregation is his body. Therefore, in this case, he's represented as the banner, because he represents and he is within us. He represents us as a nation, him being the priest and king. So, and in that day there shall be a root of Yeshai. So there's already a root of Yeshai, standing as a banner to the people. He is at the right hand of the Father. So in the heavens, just like a banner is put up high. Unto him the nation shall seek. The nations. This was not understood back in the day, mainly because of the flesh and the enemy and how they would interpret the scriptures. But this shows something that they still reject. I mean, the Jewish people, the fact that Yahushua came to open the door for the nations, not just Israel, but the nations. And that is huge. That is important. Unto him the nations shall seek. And since I just read that, let me just see another verse real quick right here. In Malachi 3, I'm not going to explain the whole thing. I'm just going to see one thing. See, I am sending my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. That would be Yahuchanan the Immerser, right? John the Baptist. Then suddenly the sovereign you are seeking comes to his Heikal, meaning Yahushua comes to his body, his temple, right? But the point here is that it's talking about Yahushua, who came right after John the Baptist, and they both came 2,000 years before the messenger of the covenant, in whom you delight. See, he is coming, said Yahweh of hosts. and who is able to bear the day of his coming, and who is able to stand when he appears, for he is like a fire of a refiner. So it's talking about the messenger of the covenant. He is like the fire of a refiner. Yahushua HaMashiach, the sovereign you are seeking, he is the water of life. So first, Yahuhanan the immerser came immersing in water. Then came the sovereign to fulfill the spiritual meaning of that, immersing us in the Ruach HaKodesh, giving us forgiveness of sins, so that at the end of times, in that day, the messenger of the covenant, who in Daniel 9 confirms the covenant, in whom you delight, because he brings the goodness of Yahweh. See, he is coming, said Yahweh of hosts. So my point, well, one of my points, see how it mentions the third, and after that it mentions the end of days. But Yahushua and John the Baptist came 2,000 years ago. After this point, it's talking about the end of time. That is something that the Yahudim didn't understand, so that's why they were expecting Eliyahu to be the one of Malachi 4, or the one of the very end of times. But the reason why I came here first is because it says, then suddenly the sovereign you are seeking. And if we go back to Yeshayahu, it says, unto him the nations shall seek. Right? So that shows how the root of David, the root of Yeshai, is Yahushua, as he himself said it. And he would be the one who would open the door for the Gentiles. And he was prophesied, and not just here, many times in several prophets. So unto him the nation shall seek, and his rest shall be esteemed. Right? There's no higher place there than where he rests at the moment, where he's at the right hand of the Father. There is no higher place where a man can get than at the right hand of Yahweh, right? Because Yahweh obviously is the most high. So the closer you can get is right next to him. And imagine what that is. So his rest shall be esteemed. So this was prophesying that he would go to the heavens after his resurrection and sit at his right hand, right? The root. But then we continue, and it says, and he shall be in that day, meaning the end of days, when we would have a banner in the heavens, which is key, because when he comes to gather his people, would be those who are under that banner, those who recognize the root of Yeshai, Yahushua HaMashiach. So he will come and see, okay, so he is under this banner, this one too, and then he will get them all together. Unto him the nation shall seek, and his rest shall be esteemed. So at the moment, this has been fulfilled already. Everybody's seeking his presence, but he is at the right hand of the Father. And then it says, and it shall be in that day that Yahweh sets his hand again. So by saying again, obviously we can speak of the second coming, right? The second manifestation. For Yahushua came as the first. The last obviously would be second in that sense. But also, since we see the context, it is referring to the fact that he already did it during the first Exodus. So this saying again a second time is like saying again there will be an Exodus. Again, his hand will gather his people. But this time from the four corners of the earth, for that other time was just from Egypt. But Egypt in itself represents the four corners of the earth. It represents the whole world, a world of affliction, as Joseph called it. Well, land of affliction. And like I said, the meaning of Mizraim is two limits, or double limit, or border. And that would make reference to this reality as well, because it has a double limit, beginning and end. And there's nothing before that regarding this reality, and there will be nothing about this reality after that, only that which is eternal, which Yahweh will save from this reality and take it to the next. So And it shall be in that day, once again, the end, that Yahweh sets his hand again. Remember that Yahushua HaMashiach is represented spiritually in scriptures by the arm. That's why we can do all things through Mashiach, who strengthens us. He is the arm of Yahweh. The second manifestation is his hand. So arm and hand will become one at the end, as we see in Ezekiel 37 from 15 on, and as well as in Zechariah 14:9, and other parts really, but those are the ones that are kind of the most clear about it. So sets his hand again. Now, remember that I have also explained how Michael is that second manifestation for several reasons that we see all throughout scriptures over and over again. For instance, we just read Malachi, where if you see in Hebrew, well, first of all, Malachi means my messenger, my messenger. And that from the Greek, they would have translated it as my angel. So malach is what normally is translated as angel, even though envoy, messenger would be better. I thought it was going to be in Hebrew already, but if you see in Hebrew, it says, Hineni shleach malachi. Behold, I am sending my messenger, my malach. Then we see farther along the line where it says, well, he will prepare the way before my face. And then it says, the Adon, which is Yahushua, whom you seek. And then it says, and the Malach of the covenant. If you look throughout Daniel, you will realize that the Malach of the covenant is Michael, the Malach, for many reasons. I repeat, mainly in Daniel. There are many other verses throughout the entire scriptures, but Daniel is very key when it comes to understanding who Michael is. And here Malachi sheds light on it as well by saying that a malach would come and then another malach, but in the middle, the Adon. Right? And remember that the two witnesses in Revelation 11 are the two who are at each side of the Adon of the whole earth. And we have a malach on one side and a malach on another side, right? And Adon in the middle. So these two represent the two witnesses, or are the two witnesses. This one is Eliyahu, as Yahushua confirmed when he said Yahuchanan is the Eliyahu that had to come, if you can receive it. This other one is the witness like Moshe. That's why he is the Malach of the covenant. Who was the one who Yahweh used to make the covenant? Moshe. And who was talking to Moshe? Michael. His hand. That's why he sent his hand to take them out of Egypt. And that is why when the covenant, the two tablets were written with the commandments, it was written with the finger of Elohim, meaning by the hand. And you know there's a right hand and a left hand, right? So that's why I always explain how there were two malachim working there, Mikael and Hillel, at that same point, that same time. And it is from Hillel that the Talmud came. From Hillel, Baal, that the Torah Shebaal Peh came. The Torah according to the mouth of Baal. So remember also that we see in the New Covenant, remember that Yahweh says in the New Covenant that Yahweh is one and Moshe is one. But he was receiving what he was receiving from several, at least two. And that's why I say right hand, left hand, defender, accuser, Mikael, Halel. Mikael as the Malach of the people of Israel, and Halel as the Malach who was over the nations as leader in the second heaven, but who lost his job, of course, because of his sin. And that's why I said, if you want to ask any questions about that, timing, chronologically, and everything, I can answer them in a while. So here we see a Malach here, we see a Malach here, we see Ha'adon in the middle. And this is the Malach of the covenant. So that is Mikael, who comes as the witness like Moshe, who Moshe represented during the first Exodus, who was just a representation of this second Exodus that we're talking about tonight. So the Malach of the covenant, but going back to Yeshayahu, his hand, right? That Malach of the covenant, because it was the finger that wrote the 10 commandments on the 2 tablets. And oh yeah, I'm gonna have to do this too. If we go to Genesis 38, remember that this would be pronounced really Yahudah, not yet, but Yahudah, right? So we have Yahu, and he married the son. I mean, he married the daughter of this friend of his that he had, Yahudah, right? The son of Jacob, married the daughter of a man named Shua. So by this union, Yahweh was showing us that through them would come Shua, the Messiah. And through this, and even in this translation, which makes short of it, you can see that the pronunciation of the name of the Messiah would be Yahushua, not Yahusha, as some pronounce it. And this is not just the only one, it's just that I had to come here for another reason, but I just wanted to make sure that was understood. So he married the daughter of Shua, Bat Shua in Hebrew. And there are several things regarding that are very interesting, but I will continue. Regarding this, I'll just say that it is interesting that Yahweh doesn't give her name in this chapter, although in the book of Yashar, we do find her name. But here, the name is not given. Why? Because her name had to appear as Batshua because of what she would represent and because of the name that we would get from here, Yahushua, through the union of Yahudah and Batshua. So after she dies, which represents Yahushua coming and dying, and therefore there being a change from those of the flesh to those of the spirit. That's why there's a change from Batshua to Tamar, but Yahudah remains the same. So Yahudah gets with Tamar by mistake, if we could say, thinking she was a prostitute, which represents how in the end the congregation would be sadly within the whore of Babylon, meaning with the false doctrine throughout the apostasy. But she was the congregation, the true congregation is not really a prostitute, even though before coming to Yahushua was mixed up with the false doctrines. So then they get together and she gets pregnant. And after she gives birth, it says, and it came to be at the time for giving birth that twins were in her womb. These twins, right? Remember that, let's see, that was verse 27. You see how it says, tell me, tell me. For instance, Toma or Thomas, right? Means twin. And I just wanted to mention that because remember that there are 12 constellations throughout which the sun goes every year. Well, every month changes constellation. So the sun is 30 days on within each of those constellations. And one of those constellations, since they all represent the coming of the light of the world to fulfill the role that Yahweh um, gave him, pretty much. And we have as the third Gemini, which would mean twins. And in mythology, they connected to Pollux and Castor, which is a very interesting mythology because we see how the enemy copies everything and twist it, like twist pretty much, well, the truth to make his religion throughout history in different cultures so that people would follow him. But even in that story, you can find a certain truth because it is said that one of the two twins was pretty much half heavenly and the other one was earthly. So one had powers, the other one didn't. But they were twins still. So that is like the representation of the first and the last. First came through a virgin, the last comes through a regular relationship between a man and a female. Yet they spiritually are twins. That's why they are represented by Gemini. Right after Aries and Taurus, or the lamb and the ox, first and last, we have Gemini to represent that they are twins. But Yahushua came first, and this is represented by this story right here. So by saying that she had twins, that represents the first and the last, which I repeat is represented by that constellation in the heavens, which is actually the month in which we celebrate Shavuot. And that's interesting because that's the day of the covenant, or the union, in this case with of the father with his congregation, the groom with the bride. So united and becoming one. And it came to be at the time giving birth that twins were in her womb. And it came to be when she was given birth, this part connects with the Exodus, when Israel became a nation finally by having a law and a leader and a mighty one and a priest, etc. So when she was given birth, and this is also important because remember that the second Exodus will be also like the birth pains, like the pains of a woman giving birth, as we see, and we will see in the next study in Revelation 12. So when she was given birth, that the one put out his hand. Now, verse 28, and I know this may not be, well, no, it is related completely, but may not seem so yet. So it came to be when she was given birth that the one put out his hand, 28, I repeat, it says, Vayitain Yad, right? The hand, you see how the hand is composed by a Yud and a Dalet, which is pretty much the hand and the door, which can be seen as the good shepherd opening the door for the sheep, and that is the hand. The hand of Yahweh is the good shepherd who opens the door. Yahushua said, I am the door. And then he said, I am the good shepherd, making reference to first and last. So the good shepherd has to go through the door. So the door had to be there before. And that's why Yahushua is the first. He is the door. The last comes as the good shepherd who opens that door by giving testimony of Mashiach and dying for that testimony. So just the word hand in Hebrew says a lot. The hand that opens the door, the hand that gives to the poor, the hand that gathers from the four corners of the earth. Because remember that Dalet is the fourth letter and the numerical value is 4. So the hand that gathers the four corners of the earth. And the numerical value is 14, Yud Dalet. 14 is the numerical value of David, King David, the name David, which is clearly through Yirmiyahu and many other prophecies connected to the last. Just like, for instance, Yahushua is connected to Shemuel, who anointed David as a king, but Shemuel was a high priest. Yahushua came as the high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. And he is our intercessor, for he is the one who is heard by Yahweh when we pray to him in his name. And Shemuel means he who is heard by Elohim. Another meaning of Shemuel is his name is mighty. And we know that the name of Mashiach is the only name given to men through which we can be saved. So, so much I want to say because it all connects. But what I know is that the study at the end would be very nice. So, if we continue with verse 28, it says, and it came to be when she was given birth that the one put out his hand, like I said, the first Exodus, when Yahweh sent his hand for the first time, which represents Mikael, who led Israel out of Egypt and into the promised land after 40 years. Remember that 40 is also the number of jubilees that there will be between the first and the last, between the first manifestation and the second manifestation of Yahweh on this earth. 40 jubilees, 2,000 years. That's why there were 40 years between coming out of Egypt and getting into the promised land. So, and it came to be when she was given birth that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took a scarlet thread and bound it on his hand, saying, this one came out first. This one came out first, but only the hand. And that represents in the Exodus when the hand of Elohim wrote the commandments on the 2 tablets, but then went back in, hid himself again from the people. And he was given a scarlet thread. Remember that the witness like Moshe, according to, Revelation 19, but it's also Isaiah 63, he says that he comes dressed in red or scarlet. And also that represents the fact that he comes as the prodigal son. Since we already spoke about the twins, them being twins, the parable of the prodigal son refers to the coming of the last, being his other brother, his brother, who never sinned, obviously Yahushua, and the father being Yahweh. So it says he was given a scarlet thread. Now, this is so interesting because even though it says this one came out first, he was given a scarlet thread, right? If we go to the Hebrew, once again, it says al yado, on his hand, shani, scarlet, saying ze yatsa, this came out Roshana, Rishona, my bad, Rishona. So this came out first, right? But my point here is this: if we go to the translator in Google, if we write scarlet, shani, you'll see that also. Okay, let me do it because it should be. You see there, scarlet, right? Let me go to this calculator. Right, shani. We look for in scriptures, scarlet. Now here it is. So this is in Spanish. So let me take this. You see how it's the same word right here, right here. Same 3 letters. One is pronounced shani, scarlet. The other one is pronounced shani. If we take this number, which is the one right after, right? 8,145. And we go to the English concordance. So we look for that one here. You'll see shani means second. So he was given on his hand. Oh, we have 2 on Mars. He was given a scarlet thread on his hand, and it was said he came out first. However, we could also read he was given second, yet he was seen first, because his hand came out, but then went in, and then he came after his brother. So he came second. That, going back to this, and he shall, no, not this one, this one. Over his hand to be second, or scarlet. And my point, well, many points here, but one of them that is very important, the fact that the one who comes second, the one who is last, is the one who comes dressed in red. The one who comes shani comes in shani. Same word, all right? Dressed in red. And as the prodigal son, which is part of the meaning of being covered in scarlet. In fact, now that I think about it as well, remember how Yahushua said that he's coming like a thief in the night. The enemy has twisted everything so that people call good evil and evil good. So when they see the good shepherd, they will say that's a thief. He's wicked. He's a wolf. That's why he comes like Benjamin. Benjamin was represented by a wolf. He comes as a lion, but Satan goes like a roaring lion looking for whom he may devour. So the last comes as a lion. Satan is like a lion. The last comes like Benjamin, who was the last son of Jacob, who was a wolf. But the enemy is a wolf in sheep clothing. Yahushua said he would come like a thief. And people obviously don't like thieves. He would be dressed in red, meaning Edom, Isaiah 63, meaning he would be like a Gentile. Then that would mean also in scarlet as the prodigal son from a regular relationship, not a virgin. And many other reasons why he will be seen as evil, wicked, not as people expect, because they are expecting the lamb, yet they will get the lion. They will see him as a wolf. They will see him as a thief. They will see him as many other things. So going back here, Midwife took a scarlet thread and bound it on his hand, saying this one came out first. And it came to be, oh yeah, what I was going to say, I'm sorry, about the scarlet thread. Remember that in Yom Kippur, they would get a scarlet thread, cut it in two, and they would tie one of the ends to the temple and another one to the Azazel goat, the male goat that was sent to Azazel in the desert, right? Azazel is Abaddon, who will come from the abyss in the fifth trumpet, and eventually will enter the body made for him, the image of the beast, and he will claim to be the Christ, and people will believe him, sadly, most. That's why Yahushua said, it is written that if Yahweh didn't shorten the times, even those who are chosen would be lost because of how amazingly deceitful the plan they have is. So there was a scarlet thread that was placed on the Azazel goat, and that Azazel goat would go to the desert. And that Azazel goat represents the Antichrist, who is blamed for all sins. That's why that goat wouldn't die, or wasn't supposed to die. The Jewish people started to kill it later on, but the Azazel goat wasn't supposed to die, because that represents the one who will carry with all the sins of all humanity. Because just like Mashiach paid for all the sins through his death, because atonement comes through blood, as we see in Leviticus 17, right after Leviticus 16, where we see Yom Kippur. Atonement comes through blood, so Mashiach died for our sins. In the book of Hanog, it says that Azazel was blamed for, well, he was guilty of all the sin of the world. So just like Yahushua paid for all the sin, Azazel is blamed for all of it. So there we see the same idea of Yahushua and Barabbas, and people asking for Barabbas to go free. So Barabbas, which means son of the Father, and we had Yahushua, the son of the Father, true Father, and they decided to kill Mashiach. That would mean the male goat for Yahweh, and to let Azazel go, Barabbas. So that represents the false Messiah who claims to be the son of the Father, Bar Abba, Bar being son in Aramaic. I'm seeing a couple comments here. Verse 11, would it also mean that his hand, Michael, was present and involved in the second Exodus just as he would in the, you wrote second Exodus and second Exodus. I think you meant first and second. So yeah, he was involved in the first, no doubt, and he will be in the second, no doubt. In fact, he is the one who will sound the trumpet, the seventh trumpet, because Yahweh says that he will manifest himself with the sound of the trumpet, with the voice of the malach. Remember that just like Yahushua is the word, the last is the voice. And Thessalonians says that the voice is the malach, the voice of Yahweh, him manifesting through the malach, Michael. Galatians 3:19, the one I was talking about earlier. So let's read it since you sent it. No, it was 20, right? 20. The mediator, well, I'll read from 19. Why then the Torah, right? The law. It was added because of transgressions, the sins of men, until the seed, Yahushua, should come to whom the promise was made. The seed, because that's how it was told to Abraham, represented by Yitzhak, right? Yitzhak, the fulfillment of Yitzhak being born from Abraham and Sarah was a sign that Mashiach would come eventually. For many reasons, Yitzhak represents Yahushua, just like Jacob represents the last. That's why Jacob got dressed as Esau or Edom, and that's why the last comes as a Gentile, even though he's a descendant of Israel from Joseph. So until the seed, so the seed becomes the root, right? So this confirms what we were reading on Isaiah. Yahushua is the root, not the branch. Until the seed should come to whom the promise was made, Yahushua. And it was ordained through messengers. This is key because obviously, well, not obviously, but if you know a little bit about Judaism, you will see that it is obvious that they would hate this verse. They don't like angels being involved in anything that has to do with them, like in the sense that they expect or hope or think or believe that everything has been straight, like directly from the Almighty Creator to Moshe and then them, right? They don't really, and I say that because, for instance, when I started reading the Gnostic books and through the scriptures, understanding them, thankfully, to the Ruach HaKodesh, when I compared it with the interpretations given in Judaism, I found how they are so adamant or really, well, pretty much don't like at all any mention of angels having anything to do with creation, for instance, being involved in creation. Just like, for instance, a king opens his mouth, gives an order, and that order is followed by somebody who makes it happen. And Yahweh spoke everything into creation like a king, for he is king. So in the same way, this creation came to be as him opening his mouth through the word, creating everything. But in the middle, there were many things like in here. So let me explain this. And it was ordained through messengers, meaning malachim, or angels, in the hand of a mediator, messenger. So we see that there were angels involved in the giving of the Torah. And then he says, the mediator, however, is not of one. This is a huge verse, and I love this verse. And that's why I kind of, well, I obviously wanted to read it, but I know that it takes me a while to say everything I want to say. So the mediator, and in this case, he's talking about Moshe, right? Because it was to him that the Torah was given. The mediator, however, is not of one. So this is huge. And once again, something that I would love to see a Jewish person see. But Elohim is one. I would say, but Yahweh is one, right? As Deuteronomy says. So there's a mediator, Moshe, one person. And Yahweh, as Deuteronomy says, is one. But the mediator is not of one. So he was not mediating only for Yahweh, who is one, but also for another. And that's, once again, another way that Yahweh keeps free will alive in this reality, by giving two options, as he always says, or he said in Deuteronomy, I place before you life and death. Choose life, right? So in this case, there was a malach, an accuser, and there was another malach who defends. So Hillel and Michael. And the one who accuses was looking for the way to accuse everybody. So he gave the wrong interpretation, for he didn't even know the true one anyways. So he gave the wrong interpretation, and that is the one that became the Talmud. I just want to make that clear. The true interpretation came through Yahushua, and that's called the new. The mediator, however, is not of one, but Yahweh is one. So a huge verse. There were at least a couple angels working at that time. And I mean, having to do with the giving of the Torah. At least a couple. Obviously, there could have been more because of this verse, but those others would have been under the charge of the previous two I mentioned, Hillel and Michael. Then Acts 7:53. I'll read from the 52. Which of the prophets did you fathers not persecute? And they killed those who before announced the coming of the righteous one, of whom you now have become the betrayers and murderers, who received the Torah as it was ordained by messengers, but did not watch over it. That's awesome verse, Noah. Thank you. So, who received the Torah as it was ordained by messengers. Once again, plural. At least two. Malachim, angels. Not directly, but through angels. But did not watch over it. This would be, but you did not keep it. You did not guard it. You did not fulfill it. Why? Because from those messengers, they followed the one who wasn't the right one. They followed the one who wanted to fool them. And that's what Mashiach made clear when he came and questioned them, when they revealed themselves before Mashiach as the sons of the wicked one. So, going back to, well, I was even in Genesis. Hold on. Genesis 38, right? So, and the midwife took a scarlet thread. So as I was saying, the scarlet thread is interesting because it's placed on the one who represents the last, who comes dressed in red, as from Edom. And he's going to be called, obviously, a false prophet or a false Messiah. And perhaps for having that scarlet thread, not that it will be literal, but just like the Azazel goat had a scarlet thread, this one had a scarlet thread. One, Azazel, is wicked. The other one is righteous through Yahushua. So then he said, and it came to be as he drew back his hand, once again, the hand, as he drew back his hand, Michael, after the Exodus, that see, his brother came out, meaning Yahushua HaMashiach, the representation here, of course. And she said, how did you break through? How did you break through? Yahushua came through a virgin. How did he break through? Yahushua came to make an opening for us to break through into eternity. So this bridge be upon you. So his name was called Peretz. And as we know in the book of Matthew and also Luke, we see that Yahushua came from Peretz. And afterward, his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, so his name was called Serach, like the rising of the sun. The last is the son of righteousness, who comes to begin the day of Yahweh. So therefore, like the rising of the light of the sun in the morning, the meaning of Serach. So all of that just to explain how the hand refers to Mikael. And he said, Yahweh said his hand again a second time. A second time, so that refers to a second Exodus, sending Mikael. So, but this time with a banner in the heavens, which wasn't there during the previous Exodus. And it shall be in that day that Yahweh sets his hand again a second time to recover the remnant of his people who are left from Ashur. So Ashur, and from Mizraim, and from Patros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamat. So it mentions 7 nations by name, which represents the 7 continents. It represents completion, right? Earthly completion. But then adds the islands of the sea, and from the islands of the sea. So it makes the 8th like a new beginning that will come right afterward. Like the 8th day, after waiting 7 days during Sukkot, the 8th, Shemini Atzeret, the 8th assembly. So these 7 nations and the islands of the sea represent all the nations of the world. And it shall be in that day that Yahweh sets his hand again a second time to recover the remnant of his people who are left from Ashur, and from Mizraim, from Patros, and from Cush, from Elam, and from Shinar, from Hamat, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall raise a banner for the nations, that is Yahushua. When his hand comes, he shall raise a banner, give testimony of Yahushua to all the nations, and gather the outcasts of Israel, the true Israelites who are outcasts all throughout the 4 corners of the earth, and assemble the dispersed of Yahudah from the 4 corners of the earth. So we see a very clear verse regarding a second Exodus when we understand those points that we discussed already. And even in this same chapter, if we go to verse 15, it says, and Yahweh shall put under the ban the tongue of the sea of Mizraim. The tongue of the sea of Mizraim, right? Remember, like the sea of Mizraim, which the people of Israel went through, right? Well, when he parted. So also the tongue as talking about the enemy, the dragon, who speaks against us, the accuser. And remember, as we will see eventually, and I won't see these verses at the moment because we will see him in a future study, in Revelation 12, the enemy goes after the bride, not able to get her. So he goes after the many, the descendants, those who fulfill the commandments and have the testimony of Mashiach, but did not have the name. And he will do it through his army, which will act like a river. But my point actually was that in Revelation 12, we see that the enemy will be expelled from heaven. And when he comes down, there will be no accusation against us anymore, because the accuser of our brethren was thrown out. So, and Yahweh shall put under the ban, Revelation 12, the tongue of the sea of Mizraim, the accuser of the world. And he shall wave his hand, Yahweh, his hand, over the river like the Nile, with the might of his Ruach. And well, the Nile, because I was thinking about Mizraim, and because of other things I was thinking regarding when Jacob and Yosef entered Mizraim. But remember that they went through the Sea of Reeds, or the Sea of Mizraim first, and then they went through the river Yarden, the Jordan River. So the Yarden, the sea and the river, representing several things. The river representing death, but going through it without getting wet represents going to eternity without dying. So, and he shall wave his hand over the river with the might of his ruach, and shall strike it in the 7 streams, and shall cause men to tread it in sandals, right? To go through it without getting wet, meaning without dying. The 144,000 who will enter eternity without experiencing death. And not only that, remember that the sandals represent the good news. So we see that in Ephesians 6, the good news are the sandals, the good news of the kingdom. So it is because of those good news that the chosen few will be able to go through without getting wet, meaning without tasting death. And there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people. The remnant are the chosen few. The highway, that is Mashiach, the way. And he's at the right hand of the Father, so he's pretty high way. So, and when there shall be and there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people, those left from Ashur, as it was for Israel in the day when he came up from the land of Mizraim. So it says, just like in the Exodus, just like in the first Exodus. So it will be similar, but greater, as we will see. It will be similar, but way better. As it was for Israel in the day when he came up from the land of Mizraim. Ashur means a step. So we are that close, just a step away. And Ashur represents the New World Order. That's why the Assyrian is a representation or a title that refers prophetically to the beast, the world leader, the little horn of the book of Daniel. So now let's go to Isaiah 27. Isaiah 27, verse 12. It says, and in that day, once again, the end of days, it shall be that Yahweh threshes from the channel of the river to the Wadi of Mizraim, and you shall be gathered. This is great. And you shall be gathered one by one, O children of Israel. This is huge for several reasons. One of them, the fact that he says one by one. So it doesn't matter if you are all alone in your nation, in your town, whatever you may be. If you are all alone in the belief, if you persevere, when the time comes, you will be gathered with the rest, because he will go one by one, because we are dispersed throughout the 4 corners, not like the last time when the whole of the nation was in Egypt, even in Goshen, although I'm sure there were some who lived around, but Goshen was the main land in Egypt where Israel was during the first Exodus. This time we're all over the place. So that's why he promises, so that no one is left behind. And you shall be gathered one by one, O children of Israel. And in that day it shall be that a great shofar is blown. You see, the 7th trumpet of Revelation 11 is when it sounds, but the fulfillment of it is explained in Revelation 12 and Revelation 14. Thessalonians and Corinthians also mention it. In fact, Paul is the one who explains it. He reveals the mystery, for it was written in the Old Covenant, but it was a mystery. Nobody understood it. Yahweh gave the Ruach HaKodesh through Yahushua to Paulus, Shaul, or Paul, and he understood it and he explained it in Thessalonians and in Corinthians, as we will see eventually. But for now, we'll stay here. And in that day of the 7th trumpet, which all points to Shemini Atzeret, the 22 of the 7th month in the true calendar, it shall be that a great shofar. Remember that in Yom Teruah, there are 4 different types of shofar sounds that are made, 4 different ways of blowing the shofar on Yom Teruah. Each of those 4 represent the 4 feasts that are to go, that still need to be fulfilled. Yom Teruah, Day of Trumpets, or Day of blowing the shofar. Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, Sukkot, what they call tabernacles, and Shemini Atzeret, the 8th assembly. Those 4. And the great sound of the shofar is the 4th. So it goes with Shemini Atzeret, as we see here. And in that day shall be that a great shofar is blown. There will be no greater shofar than the last. And remember that in Corinthians and in Thessalonians, Paul says there will be a shofar, and it will be the 7th. I mean, it will be the last at the final trumpet or shofar. And then we see in the book of Revelation that there are 7 trumpets that are blown. The 7th obviously is the last. So the 7th is the one that Paul is mentioning. And when we read what happens during the 7th trumpet, it's clear. It is true. That's the one. So it says here, Vehaya bayom hahu, and it will be in that day, Itaka beshofar. It will sound, oh, this is the point. This is what I wanted to see. Shofar gadol. Shofar gadol. Great shofar. The shofar gadol. And like I said, the gadol is part of the title of that last shofar sound from the 4 of Yom Teruah. So when and in that day it shall be that a great shofar is blown. That will be the 7th trumpet, confirming that the 2nd Exodus will be completed at the last trumpet. Right? Like I said at the beginning of the teaching, it begins with the 2nd Exodus. It ends with the harvest. The harvest happens when the 7th shofar or trumpet is blown. And those who were perishing in the land of Ashur, which, like I already mentioned, represents the New World Order, and the outcast in the land of Mizraim shall come. When we see Ashur and Mizraim, obviously Mizraim, the first reason why it's being mentioned is so that we remember the Exodus. But when Ashur and Mizraim is mentioned, or the Assyrian and the Pharaoh, it represents the first beast and the second beast, the world government and the religious government. So, or the world leader and the religious leader, etc., etc. So, perishing in the land of Ashur and the outcast in the land of Mizraim shall come. Those who are perishing because of the rule of the government, those who are outcast because of religion, shall come and shall worship Yahweh on the set apart mountain in Jerusalem. When the great shofar is blown. And we see in Revelation that the great shofar is blown, the 7th, Revelation 11, and then in Revelation 14, we see that the 144,000 with the name of the Father and the Son on their foreheads, which is the seal of the living mighty one, are all gathered on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. And they are singing a song. So once again, this confirms the 2nd Exodus and the harvest during the sounding of the great shofar. So if we go now to Isaiah 43, and give me a second, I'll be, well, a couple minutes, I'll be right back. 20, no, we're on 43. A couple parts, let's see here. Let's go to verse 5. It says, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not fear, for I am with you. I shall bring your seed from the east and gather you from the west. I will bring your seed from the east. Interestingly, Yahushua, the seed, came from the east, and gather you from the west. Yahushua said, one is the one who sows, and another one, the one who harvests or gathers. So you see how it makes reference to the seed and then the gathering. East and west, first and last. I shall bring your seed from the east and gather you from the west. Obviously, in general, he's talking about gathering his people from all over the place, east and west. That would include north and south. And also, the seed refers to the children of those who heard this prophecy first. But my point is the two words used, seed and gather, right? To sow and to harvest, first and last. Then it says, I shall say to the north, you see now includes the north, give them up, and to the south, do not keep them back. Give them up. The north doesn't want to give them up, but Yahweh will send the order, right? Just like Egypt did not want to give Israel up because they knew they would lose all their handiwork, right? All their slaves who were building a couple of their towns. And to the south, do not keep them back. Bring my sons from afar and my daughters from the ends of the earth. From the ends of the earth, from everywhere. Sons and daughters. And then we go to verse 18. And it says, do not remember the former events. This is an amazing part. Do not remember the former events, nor consider the events of old. Pretty much saying, you forget about the first Exodus. Forget about everything that you heard that I've done, right? In the sense of every miracle that Yahweh has performed for his people. Do not remember the former events, nor consider the events of old. See, I am doing what is new. Let it now spring forth. Let it be so. See, I am doing what is new. This is huge because Yahweh only made 3 new things throughout history. After creating everything in the first 6 days of creation, and then rest on the 7th, meaning he created rest on the 7th for us. He said 3 times that he would do something new, and this is one of them. See, I am doing what is new. Let it now spring forth. Do you not know it? I am even making a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. There is a bit of a different, well, another translation. Still, you can understand it from this one, but still, I'll check the other one in just a second. See, I'm doing what is new. So he's about to do something new. And it's interesting how, for a lot of people, the second Exodus is something completely new, right? Has been there all along in the scriptures, is just now being understood or heard. But the new thing is that he's going to not gather like he did in the past from one nation, but now he's going to do it from all nations. The miracles that he performed in the previous Exodus are few and small in comparison to the miracles that he will perform in this second Exodus. So see, I am doing what is new. Let it now spring forth. Do you not know it? I am even making a way. Yahushua is the way, right? The last comes to give testimony of the way. So it will be like showing the way. Like Moshe was leading the people through the wilderness. I am even making a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert, right? Like he gave water to the people in the desert. Yahweh will do the same, but this is not only in the literal, it's the fact that we are in the apostasy, a desert, and we have rivers through Mashiach, Yahushua, his Ruach HaKodesh, which is the way in the wilderness, for this world is wild, no doubt. So, now let's go to Isaiah 49, verse 12. See, these come from far away, and see those from the north and the west, and these from the land of Sinim. Can we read this one? Sing, O heavens, rejoice, O earth, and break out in singing, O mountains, for Yahweh shall comfort his people and have compassion on his afflicted ones. Now let's go to Isaiah 51, verses 10 and 11. So it says, was it not you who dried up the sea, the waters of the great deep? Right, talking about Yahweh. Now, if we read the one previous to that one, see how it says crocodile, but it shouldn't. Verse 9. Hebrew, right? Says Tanin, that's a dragon. So it's talking about the dragon. So awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of Yahweh, right? Yahushua HaMashiach, the arm. Awake as in days of old, for everything was made through the word. And in our time, Yahushua came in the days of old, right? Awake as in the days of old, everlasting generations. Was it not you who cut Rahab apart and pierced the dragon? Rahab, not talking about the woman in Jericho who accepted the two spies or representation of the witnesses. This represents Leviathan, Samael, and Egypt, and Samael as the angel of Egypt. So wasn't that you who cut Rahab apart and pierced the dragon? Wasn't that you who dried up the sea, the waters of the great deep, who made the depths of the sea a way for the redeemed to pass over? Who made the depths of the sea a way for the redeemed to pass over, right? As the chosen few will pass over into eternal life when he dries up the sea, meaning Sheol, death, which are the waters of the great deep. So, water, verse 10, yeah. The home, when he says deep. So, who made the depths of the sea a way for the redeemed to pass over? And let the ransom of Yahweh return. Let the ransom of Yahweh return, meaning those for whom Yahushua paid. And they shall come to Sion with singing. Like I mentioned, Revelation 14, the 144,000 with the name of the Father and the Son on their foreheads, Yahweh, Yahushua in their minds, for they confess to be saved, as Romans 10:10 says. And they will be gathered after the seventh trumpet on Mount Zion. And they will sing the song of Moshe and the Lamb. That is Revelation 15, just in case. And let the ransom of Yahweh return, and they shall come to Sion with singing, with everlasting joy. Everlasting joy. Finally, it will be everlasting after the transformation. With everlasting joy on their heads. What did I say the 144,000 have on their heads? The name of the Father and the Son. It is through those two names that we will have everlasting joy. Remember that? And well, let me just see this in Hebrew first. You see how it says Vesimchat Olam, everlasting joy, and everlasting joy. So remember how this word means he will be happy, he will rejoice. If I take this letter, put it here, and this other one, put it here, we have the Messiah. So it is through Messiah that we will rejoice. So with everlasting joy. It's interesting, this word right here, like if we were to take it just exactly as it is, let me put it here and expand a little bit. So we have the same, right? And Simchat, this is a taf, which is a cross in the pictographic and in the Paleo Hebrew. This is a vav, which is a nail. So isn't it interesting that we have a nail and a cross and in the middle, simcha, or if we move this, mashach or mashiach, meaning, and the ointment would be fulfilled through the nail going through Mashiach on the cross. I hope that was understood. But the actual thing that I wanted to show, let me see what it was. And let the ransom of Yahweh return, and they shall come to Zion with singing and everlasting joy on their heads. Everlasting joy on their heads. Oh, yeah. That this right here is name, right? Name. In Hebrew, the yud and the mem is the plural. Well, that would be C. That is C. But if you put this at the end of a word, that would be the plural of it. So for instance, El, they would say most likely God, but you already know. Well, they put the other translation too. But you know how Elohim ends with Yud Mem? They translate it like that, but that is plural. Maybe I should have used another example. But if also you know the name of the book of Exodus, which is Shemot, that is translated as names. Names, Shemot. That is the true name of the book known as Exodus, because it begins with the names of those who enter Exodus, to enter Egypt, who came from Jacob. This is the feminine plural, Ot. This is the masculine plural, Im. So if we take the feminine plural and replace it with the masculine, we have Shemaim, which is heavens. But my point is that heavens can be seen as names, but names of two men, for instance, in this case, the name of the Father and the Son, Yahweh, Yahushua. That's why they're masculine, not only because they are the names of the Father and the Son, but also because they are heavens, and the heavens are masculine while the earth is feminine. That's why on earth is Shemot, while in Shemaim is Shemaim, while in the heavens is Shemaim, right? And remember that Shem right here, name, is fire and water combined. That's why the heavens are made of water and fire combined. Shemaim, Esh and Maim. You see how Maim is water. Esh is the main sound of fire. The Shin, You see water and fire. I take the Aleph, which is a mute letter, actually, and then unite that, and we have the heavens. The heavens are made up of the names of the Father and the Son, and that's why the way to enter the heavens is by having the names of the Father and the Son in your mind, on your forehead. And as you know, fire and water is Yahushua, the water of life. The last is the consuming fire. So when the first and the last unite, then you have the name of the Father, and he becomes known by the world. So going back to Yeshayahu, it says, and let the ransomed of Yahweh return, and they shall come to Zion with singing, with everlasting joy on their heads. The name of the Father and the Son. Let them attain joy and gladness. Let them attain joy and gladness. Sorrow and sighing shall flee away. No more tears, no more pain. Let them attain joy and gladness. Verse 11. This two, Simcha, which we already saw how it connects to Mashiach. And then this one connects to the last, joy and gladness. In this case, gladness will be the one with Mashiach, and the other one, joy, with the last. As you can see, fire, double portion of fire, coming as the Son of Man from Nun, as a prodigal son, the heir to the throne. Nun is the ancestor, one of the ancestors of the last. Nun, who came from Ephraim. So, yeah, this word is connected to the coming of the last. But continuing, I think that was the verse. Yeah, actually, we had one more. Then, so now let's go to Jeremiah 3, verse 18. In those days, the end of days, the house of Yehudah, which are the chosen few in relation to Israel, Yehudah and Israel, the few and the many. In those days, the house of Yehudah shall go to the house of Israel, and they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given as an inheritance to your fathers. Because finally, in our time, both the few and the many will be gathered, both during the harvest, the few as the wheat of the harvest in Revelation 14, and the many as the grapes for the winepress of the wrath. Still in Jeremiah, let's go to Jeremiah 16. Jeremiah 16, verse 14 through 17. Therefore, see, the days are coming. Once again, the end of days. Therefore, see, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when it is no longer said. This is a very important verse. And I just remembered that I was going to read another verse in another translation, but hopefully I explained it well in the translation I left it. So, therefore, see, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when it is no longer said, Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of Mizraim. These verses regarding the second Exodus are kind of my favorites because of how amazing it will be. The fact that Yahweh says people will no longer talk about the Exodus from Egypt. And you know how they have made movies of it, which I'm sure are not even close to how it was. And when people talk about miracles, of course, Yahushua made the greatest miracles. But in terms of Yahweh acting for a people, for a nation, obviously, not taking into account what Mashiach did, obviously the Exodus was the greatest time, or the one that is talked the most. So the fact that Yahweh says this is a huge promise. Therefore, see, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when it is no longer said, Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of Mizraim. But Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north and from all the lands where he had driven them. For I shall bring them back into their land I gave to their fathers. I shall bring them, not the UN, not the United States, not the Rothschilds, not any of them, but Yahweh. For I shall bring them back into their land I gave to their fathers. See, this is an important verse. I am sending for many fishermen, declares Yahweh. Remember, like I said in Revelation 14, the harvest is mentioned, and some are represented by the wheat, and some are represented by the grapes. The wheat are the ones who won't have to taste death. The grapes are the ones who will be justified after dying. So few will not experience death, many will go through death, which is kind of like saying the narrow and the broad path, which has been misunderstood as well in Christian doctrine. So fishermen, when you fish, you take the fish out and they are still alive. When you hunt, you pretty much kill. That's what hunt means, right? That which you will eat. So the fish come out alive. They go from the dimension of the water to the dimension of the air, which represents going from this reality, which was made through water, and into the spiritual, which is represented by air. That's why Hushua told the disciples that he would make them fishers of men. And interestingly enough, the um, the time that has passed since he came has been called the era of Pisces. So, see, I am sending for many fishermen, declares Yahweh, and they shall fish them. Who is them? Israel, from the land of the north and from all the lands where he had driven them, right? So the children of Israel will be as fish, and Yahweh will send fishermen, being the Malachim, or well, obviously in the earthly sense, the apostles. But in that moment of the transformation, the Malachim, Yahushua himself said it. And they shall fish them. And after that, so after the wheat is taken in the harvest, as we see in Revelation 14, comes the grapes. And after that, I shall send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and every hill and out of the holes of the rocks. Remember that many will hide under the rocks, as we see in Revelation as well, telling the mountains to hide them from the presence of the wrath of the Lamb. So first fishermen, then hunters. First the wheat, then the grapes. First the few go without dying, then the many through death. It says, for my eyes are on all their ways. They have not been hidden from my face, nor has their crookedness been hidden from my eyes. For my eyes are on all their ways. They have not been hidden from my face, nor has their crookedness been hidden from my eyes. So that's why, obviously, Yahweh will choose whom he will seal, and therefore whom he will take with him during the seventh trumpet through the fishermen, so that they don't experience death, as he promised to the congregation of Philadelphia in Revelation 3. So now let's go to Jeremiah 23. Jeremiah 23, verse 7 and 8. It says, therefore, see, the days are coming, once again, declares Yahweh, when they shall say no more, as Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Mizraim. You see how similar it is, because Yahweh is confirming the fact that the second Exodus will be much greater than the first Exodus. And people will no longer speak about the first. They will now speak about the second, because the first will pale in comparison to the second. Just like he promised regarding the temples. And not talking about the physical earthly temple, because remember that the second temple was more humble than the first. Therefore, see, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when they shall say no more, as Yahweh lives, who brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Mizraim. But as Yahweh lives, who brought up and led the seed of the house of Israel out of the land of the north, and from all the lands where I had driven them, and they shall dwell on their own soil. And they shall dwell on their own soil. Finally, we will be in the promised land after the second Exodus. Now let's go to Jeremiah 30. And I know that many, by me reading only the Old Covenant throughout this first part of the study, many will not be impatient till the second, wonder, or even go against the idea of everything that is being said, because they would interpret what we have been written as only talking about Israel. And I say like that because to them, Israel is another people, right? Or Israel, the Jewish people. Many who may be listening being Israelites, not knowing it because of the wrong doctrines in which we were brought up, many see the Jewish people as the true people of Israel, as the true people of, as they would say, chosen by God, etc., etc. But in the new covenant, when we read it, everything will start to make even more sense and connect, so that everybody who's listening may understand that he or she can be part of this second Exodus through Yahushua. So I just want to make that clear before I continue, for I know many will say through this study of only the old covenant, oh, but that's talking about the Jewish people. What does that have anything to do with us? Not knowing that they may even be Israelites in the flesh, but at the end, the flesh will not inherit the kingdom. So it's all about the Ruach, and that comes through Yahushua, HaMashiach. So in Jeremiah 30, verse 10 and 11, and you do not fear, O Jacob, my servant, declares Yahweh, nor be discouraged, O Israel. As I explained earlier, when the context mentions Yahudah and Israel, they represent the few and the many. But when it mentions Jacob and Israel, Jacob is the many, Israel the few. So, and you do not fear, O Jacob. One of the reasons is because Jacob was the first name given to him, and it means supplanter. It has negative connotation. Israel is the second name given to him, so he accepted a new name, and that name has a positive connotation. He who will rule as the mighty one. You can also see there the righteous one, or righteous one of the mighty one. But he who contends with the mighty one would be perhaps a more clear one, but not talking about the true mighty one, but the mighty one of this world. So Jacob represents the many who have not accepted the name of the Father and the Son. Those who have accepted the name, they are represented by the name Israel, which was the name given to him. So, and you do not fear, O Jacob, my servant, declares Yahweh, nor be discouraged, O Israel. For look, I am saving you from afar, and your seed from the land of their captivity. And Jacob shall return and have rest and be at ease, with no one to trouble him. That means that Jacob will go through some trouble. That's what they call Jacob's trouble. That being the tribulation, mainly the great tribulation, which will be the 30 days of Hosea 5:7, when the many will die during the harvest of the grapes. And Jacob shall return and have rest and be at ease, with no one to trouble him. For I am with you, declares Yahweh, to save you. Though I make a complete end of all nations, where I have scattered you, yet I do not make a complete end of you. So that means that he will leave a rest, a remnant. Those remnant are the few. The rest will have to die, but then be resurrected to be judged. Well, when it comes to the many, they will be resurrected righteous already for having rejected the mark of the beast. But I'll repeat this. For I am with you, declares Yahweh, to save you, though I make a complete end of all nations. So even though the nations will be falling apart, those who are with Yahweh, those who are his, will be fine. Though I make a complete end of all nations where I have scattered you, yet I do not make a complete end of you. But I shall reprove you in judgment, and by no means leave you unpunished. And by no means leave you unpunished. Right? And you see how it was mentioning Jacob, which I mentioned refers to mainly the. So now let's go to Jeremiah 31, verse 7. For thus said Yahweh, sing with gladness for Jacob, and shout among the chief of the nations. Cry out, give praise, and say, O Yahweh, save your people, the remnant of Israel. So you see Jacob, and then the remnant of Israel. So that shows how Israel is a name that prophetically represents the few, the remnant. Jacob, the rest of the people, the many. See, I am bringing them from the land of the north and shall gather them from the ends of the earth. Among them, the blind and the lame, those with child and those in labor, together a great assembly returning here. This is a very important verse because there are people who may have a disability of any type who, when speaking about the second Exodus, may say, what is going to happen to me? How can I how can I do that? How can I run if I have this issue? And Yahweh will take care of it somehow, some way. Either you will be healed to be able to flee. Remember that Yahweh will renew the strength like that of the eagle. Um, people will be able to do so. Whatever they need to do, they will be able to do it. Yahweh will take care of that. And that is something that everybody needs to remember. For instance, remember that it is written, and well, I'll mention this. In Christianity, they have the doctrine of the rapture, which is a mess, as we will see eventually here. And I say a mess because they take verses out of context and created a doctrine that is not from the scriptures, really, even though they use the scriptures. One of the things that they say about the rapture is that all children will be raptured. However, we see in the New Covenant, and we will read it in the next study, so I won't in this one. But in a nutshell, he says that it will be very painful for those who have given birth and for those who are pregnant. So if that was the case, if the rapture was going to take all children, then why would it be so painful if they were going to all be saved? But now I mentioned that because of this verse, because those who are of the world, those who are wicked, those who are not of Yahweh through Mashiach, they will be in trouble. So the rapture, as Christianity teaches, won't happen. So yeah, mothers and children will be left on this earth to go through the tribulation, and it will be extremely painful for both, and obviously for the parents to see their children going through pain. But that is something that has to do also with their own choices. And if we add reincarnation, that also explains a lot of why children will have to go through it. But also, as I always say, why would the rapture take all children if children have been dying all throughout history? Meaning, I'm not saying that it's good. It's painful, of course. Spiritually, it is good because they go to be in a better place, no doubt about that, because they come out of this reality of pain and etc. But my point is, when it comes to this reality, everybody understands that it's completely painful for children to have to die, to not have the chance to have a life, to have to go through pain being innocent, not taking into account reincarnation. But my point is, if children have died in the past, why does the rapture changes things just because they hope that that was the case, yet they don't have a scripture to base it on? So here we have this verse that would seem to be a contradiction with the fact that it will be very painful for those who are giving birth and for those who are pregnant. But here we see that regarding the chosen few, those who are of the remnant, they will make it and they won't go through that pain because they are of the Father. So those who are mothers or who are pregnant should be calm, should not be discouraged, as we just read, for Yahweh will take care of you and your child. So it says, see, I am bringing them from the land of the north and shall gather them from the ends of the earth. Among them, the blind and the lame, those with child and those in labor. So those with child and those in labor, they will be able to go into Exodus and they will be transformed and they will be taken because Yahweh will count them as well. But not in a rapture, as they say, in which every child will be raptured. No, throughout the Exodus and then in the transformation, those mothers who obeyed, they will be taken, they will be transformed with their children. Together, a great assembly returning here. A great assembly returning here. Kahal Gadol, the great congregation. Yahdav, together, a congregation that is great will return. Like I said, this is a very important verse. Those with child and those in labor, those who are blind and those who are lame. In the spiritual sense, those who were blind in the apostasy through Yahushua received light so they can see which way to go. Those who are lame, same. In Mashiach, they are able to walk the way. For Yahushua is the way. And they took it away in the apostasy, right? By taking the name, changing it and everything. So with weeping shall they come, right? Because no doubt it will be a great test, the last test. And I'm sure people will be weeping when they are living to the mountains. So they will be crying. With weeping they shall come, and with their prayers I bring them. I shall make them walk by rivers of waters in a straight way. Yeah, like we just read, right? Just like it happened in the first. So, and with their prayers I bring them. I shall make them walk by rivers of waters and in a straight way in which they do not stumble. That straight way is Yahushua. Yahushua is also the river of water of life. And since Yahushua already fulfilled everything, those who are in him do not stumble. And obviously, in the literal sense, it will happen as well. The spiritual is greater. For I shall be a father to Israel. For I shall be a father to Israel. Right? Yahweh came as the son first. Yahushua, the son first. Now he comes as the father last. For that's why he said in Psalm 110, sit at my right hand until I go and put your enemies as your footstool. So Yahweh as the father is coming. And it's interesting that it was in that way because as in a mirror, everything is backwards. So once reality ends, we will be able to see from the end to the beginning, and everything will make much more sense. In the sense that first the Father and then the Son. If we see it that way. Hope that was understood. But the Son came to give testimony of the Father. When the Son went up, the Father comes to give testimony of the Son. So that's why it says, for I shall be a father to Israel. Remember that I said earlier how Yahushua the first was represented by Yitzhak, right? Yitzhak. And the last is represented by Israel, Yaakov. Yitzhak was the promised son, the seed that was promised to Abraham. Yaakov was the father of Israel. So the last comes and gives the testimony of Yahushua, who is the seed. So he puts the seed in the woman, the congregation, and then he gives fruit, the chosen few. And therefore, they are his spiritual children. So Yahweh as the last becomes the father of the true Israel. For I shall be a father to Israel, and Ephraim, he is my firstborn, confirming that I just said, because Yahushua came from Yehudah, but the last comes from Ephraim, right? And not only that, Israel will be, in this context, the few, Ephraim, the many. But this refers to the last, he is my firstborn. Remember, we just read about Serach, who said this one came first, but then he went in and came second, right? He came last, even though he was called in Genesis 38, I mean. So hear the word of Yahweh, O nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say, he who scattered Israel gathers him, and shall guard him as a shepherd his flock, confirming what I said earlier as well. Remember the Yud and the Dalet, that makes the word hen, and that is the hen opening the door, the hen of the good shepherd opening the gate for the sheep. He who scattered Israel, Yahweh, gathers him when he comes as the last, and shall guard him, Israel, as a shepherd his flock, because he comes as the good shepherd. Yahushua already came as the door, as a shepherd his flock. That is verse 10. Says, Roe, as a shepherd. Oh, I cannot show this word right here. His flock. Let me see. There you go. Edro. Interesting enough, this word right here is with. For Yahweh shall ransom Jacob and redeem him from the hand of one stronger than he. And redeem him from the hand of one stronger than he. He will redeem us from the hand of the enemy, from the hand of Halel, Samael, and Azazel, from the hand of the great whore of Babylon, from the hand of the New World Order, from the hand of the beast, the false prophet, and the false Messiah. And redeem him from the hand of one stronger than he. Just like when Jacob fought with Elohim and defeated him, which was stronger than him, right? Because that represents when the last comes as a human, then goes up with authority and expels Satan from heaven in Revelation 12. For Yahweh shall ransom Jacob and redeem him from the hand of one stronger than he. Because the enemy was accusing him for coming as a prodigal son, but Yahweh through Yahushua redeems him so that he can fulfill his role, as he was prophesied also in Isaiah 63 when he says that he didn't find anybody that could save, so he saved himself. His arm saved him, as Revelation 6:3 says. 60. Now let's go to Ezekiel 11:17. In Ezekiel 11:17, it says, Therefore say, thus said the sovereign Yahweh, and I shall gather you from the peoples, and I shall assemble you from the lands where you have been scattered, and I shall give you the land of Israel. So we already saw Ishayahu, Yirmiyahu, and now Yechezkel. Now let's go to chapter 20. So 3 of the main prophets prophesying the same, sometimes even with the same words. Yechezkel chapter 20, 30. Chapter 20, verse 33 to 37. It says, As I live, declares the sovereign Yahweh, do not I, with a mighty hand, with an outstretched arm, and with wrath poured out, reign over you? As I live, so there's no doubt about it, declares the sovereign Yahweh. Do not I, listen, with a mighty hand, that is the last, the witness like Moshe, with an outstretched arm, that is the first, Yahushua HaMashiach. And it's interesting, outstretched, because he is the one who connects heaven and earth through his sacrifice. And with wrath poured out, Yahushua brought mercy, the last brings wrath. Reign over you, Yahushua came as the priest, the last comes as the king. Verse 33, just a second. Beyat chasakah. Yechezkel, pretty much the same root as mighty hand. Beyat, with hand. Chasakah, mighty or strong. Uvizeroa, and with arm, netuyah, outstretched, which is interesting how it has yah in first and last. Well, it said it last and first, as in a mirror. Then it says, and I shall bring you out from the peoples and gather you out of the lands where you are scattered. So if you feel the calling, if you have that desire to please Yahweh, the Almighty Creator, with all your heart, all your mind, all your strength, then you are being called from wherever you are. even if everybody around claims to be the same nationality, claims that you are a Gentile, whatever it may be, if you are hearing the call, it's for a reason, because Yahweh gave you ears to hear. So don't allow the enemy to fool you, telling you you are not, you cannot be, how could you be, etc. And I shall bring you out from the peoples and gather you out of the lands where you are scattered, with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm. Once again, with the last and the first, and with wrath poured out. So the second Exodus will happen while his wrath is being poured out. And remember that the seventh trumpet is when the harvest happens. There will be wrath since the sixth seal. Well, obviously since the second seal, but the sixth, it is announced that the wrath of the Lamb is going on. Then after the seventh trumpet, the wrath of Yahweh starts with the great tribulation. After the seventh trumpet comes the seven bowls of wrath. That's why the wrath will be poured out, because they are bowls that are filled with the blood of the innocent, the many who were killed for not accepting the mark of the beast. So that punishment will be poured out on them because of the wrath that killing the many lit pretty much in the Father, in the Almighty. Through those sins, through killing the many, the wrath of Yahweh was lit so that he would pour it out on the nations. So, and I shall bring you into the wilderness of the peoples. So the wilderness in whatever nation you may be. And I shall bring you into the wilderness of the peoples, and shall enter into judgment with you face to face there, just like it happened in the wilderness after Egypt, when he talked face to face to Moshe to give the Torah. So there will be an encounter of Yahweh with his people during the Exodus. As I entered into judgment with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Mizraim, so I shall enter into judgment with you, declares the sovereign Yahweh. And I shall make you pass under the rod. Remember the rod that will come from the stem of Yishai? That being the last who comes with authority. The rod representing that authority and representing therefore the covenant. I shall make you pass under the rod and shall bring you into the bond of the covenant. Right? You will be under the authority of the last, and I shall bring you into the bond of Mashiach, who made the covenant through his blood. Right? He raised the cup and said, this is the blood of the new covenant. And purged the rebels from among you, and those who transgress against me. From the land where they sojourn, I bring them out, but they shall not come into the land of Israel, and you shall know that I am Yahweh. No wicked one, no rebel will be able to enter. They will all have to repent first. Some will do it right before dying. Now let's go to Micah, or Micah, chapter 2, verse 12 and 13. This is an important, well, they are all important. Every time I read them, I remember how important. So, I shall certainly gather all of you. That's right, Omar. I shall certainly gather all of you. Certainly, no doubt about it. O Jacob, I shall bring together the remnant of Israel. Once again, I shall certainly gather all of you, O Jacob, no matter how many you are. I shall bring together, right, during the harvest, the remnant of Israel, the few, 144,000 on Mount Sion. That's why they will be brought together. Put them together like sheep of the fold. Who? Jacob and Israel. The many and the few. They will be one people. The few will be ruling over the many will be ruling over the nations. Put them together like sheep of the fold, like a flock in the midst of their pasture. They being noisy because of men. The breach maker shall go up before them. Verse 13. Allah Aporetz. And he will come up, the breach maker. Poretz. You see how here we have Peretz. We know that Yahushua came from Peretz genetically. Remember that what I always mentioned, what the first fulfills spiritually, the last fulfills physically, or in a literal sense, and vice versa. So in this case, Yahushua came genetically from Peretz. The last, by having Mashiach, is able to break through, to make a breach. So the breach makers shall go up before them. They shall break out. So the last will have to die before and go up before them. Remember that the last resurrects and go. Well, even if we are talking about Mashiach here because of the Peretz, Yahushua came 2,000 years ago, so way before us. But now the last will go before the many. I mean, before the few. Because remember, Yom Teruah, the two witnesses are captured. Yom Kippur, the two witnesses are killed. 3.5 days later, the two witnesses resurrect, they go up. A day and a half later, or a day later, Sukkot, the false Messiah appears in the world. The chosen few need to flee to the mountains. So the last has gone up about a day before the few go during the second Exodus, and therefore before the seventh trumpet on the 8th day. So the breach maker shall go up before them, right? Because he has to die so that the few can also go without experiencing death. They shall break out, the few, the chosen few, and pass through the gate. Yahushua is the gate. The last is the breach maker. And go out by it. The few will go out through that gate, that is Yahushua, in order to enter eternity, or to go out of this reality. And their sovereign pass before them. So the breach maker is their sovereign, who passes before them, right? Before them, with Yahweh at their head. Yahweh through first and last, leading his people, right? That's why Mashiach as the head of the congregation, but here as the gate, you can include it as the head, Yahweh above all, and the breach maker as the sovereign of his people, those who will break out. Hope that was clear. Now let's go to Hosea, verse 10 and 11. Let them follow Yahweh. Like a lion, he roars. When he roars, then suns shall tremble from the west. This is beautiful. Remember that Yahushua came as a lamb. Now the last comes as a lion. So this is talking about the end of times. The lion refers to judgment, to his anger being poured out. And that happens at the end, the consuming fire, while Yahushua came to bring mercy. That's why he came as a lamb, to die as the lamb of Pesach and the male goat of Yom Kippur. So let them follow Yahweh. Like a lion, he roars. So he comes to roar. People are expecting something different. Like a lion, he roars. When he roars, then sons shall tremble, right? The children shall tremble when they hear the lion. From the west, confirming where he would come from, or at least where the children of Yahweh mainly would come from, the west, right? Then sons shall tremble from the west when they hear the lion roaring. They shall tremble like a bird from Mizraim. Interesting, because remember that Yahweh will give the eagle wings to the congregation so that she may fly away from the serpent to her place, the prepared place, so that she can be there for 1,260 days. They shall tremble like a bird from Mizraim, and like a dove from the land of Ashur. Once again, Mizraim, Ashur, religion, government. The false prophet, the world leader. And I shall let them dwell in their own houses, declares Yahweh. And I shall let them dwell in their own houses. declares Yahweh. So Yahweh will take his people from false religions and from wicked governments. Now let's go to Hosea 12, verse 9. But I am Yahweh, your Elohim, since the land of Mizraim, right, where he revealed his name Yahweh, when he became the mighty one of his people. Again, I shall make you, listen, again, obviously a repetition. Again, I shall make you dwell in tents, as in the days of the appointed time. This verse is huge because he's revealing the time of the second Exodus. He's not only revealing that there will be a second Exodus again, but also saying when, the appointed time. When we dwell in tents, what is that appointed time? Sukkot, the 15th of the 7th. So, but I am Yahweh, your mighty one, since the land of Mizraim, making us remember the Exodus. Again, second Exodus, I shall make you dwell in tents. So you're going to have to go away from your homes. Before, like we saw in the previous chapter, before going to your permanent homes, you will have to leave these homes, temporal houses, away, behind, and go away from them and dwell in tents for a while. Verse 9. Okay, it's 10 in this one. So, I am Yahweh, your Elohim, from the land of Mizraim. Again, you see where it says again? Od. But this can also be pronounced aid. So when he does it again, when he comes again, he does it as a witness. The witness like Moshe. Then again, I will make you dwell in tents. Bahalim. Ohel. As in the days of the Moed. That Moed is Sukkot. But I am Yahweh Elohim, since the land of Mizraim, again shall I make you dwell in tents, as in the days of the appointed time. And lastly, I guess, before we go into other subjects, although I have other verses of the, well, let me see this one first. Let's go to Amos chapter 9, verse 13. Look, the days are coming. Once again, the end of days, the end times. The days are coming, declares Yahweh, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper. One is he who sows, one is he who harvests, as Yahushua said. One is the first, the other is the last. That the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes, him who sows seed. The treader of grapes, the many. The treader, the last. Him who sows, that is Mashiach, the seed. And the mountains shall drip new wine. And the mountains shall drip new wine. Right? Joy, doctrine. And all the hills melt, because the consuming fire is manifesting. And I shall turn back the captivity of my people Israel. So just like he made it happen, now he'll turn it back. So just like he made us dwell in the lands on the four corners of the earth, now he will bring us back. And I shall turn back the captivity of my people Israel. And they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. And they shall plant vineyards and drink wine from them, and shall make gardens and eat their fruit. And I shall plant them on their own soil, for the few are like trees, and not uproot them anymore from their own soil I have given them, because Yahushua will be a root, said Yahweh your Elohim. Said Yahweh your Elohim. So this is the first part I wanted to see regarding the old covenant and what he says about the second Exodus.